the meeting to order. When we have a whole tenants this evening, which is nice to see. And our gallery is as full as it gets. We're supposed to read this as a reminder. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel at a later date. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will know that it's recorded. What's the agenda items? Are there any? See, not anything from the staff. Then we can approve the agenda as circulated. Someone move that. Moved by Jim, seconded by Tom. All in favor? Motion is carried. We always have a provision for the declaration of conflict of interest. Do you have one? Declare it. Minutes of the previous meeting, they were circulated. Someone feel comfortable in moving the minutes of the annual meeting held March 1st. By Chris, and by Peter. Any errors or omissions? Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We have business arising from the minutes. Our stewardship annual recognition award recipient Kyle Peter cannot be with us again this evening. We're just going to get staff to present perhaps somebody take out and attend and get on. Congratulate him in person.
Take care of that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have the Locust Museum Committee minutes. Somebody move that. Rainy, right? Something. Any questions there? No call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. A piece of correspondence from October Waterfront Association. Someone will receive the correspondence. Michael, any questions there? All those in favor? Correspondence is received. The section 28 performance, Leon, where's that?
Good evening. Through the chair, the LPRCA staff approved 25 applications for development since the February Board of Directors meeting. The report shows the nature and summary of the development, and on page 19 of the map showing the percent that the descriptions have been approved. If you have any questions, I can answer them for you.
Anyone have any questions on any of the applications first up? Then you.
Hello. I'm on page 15 of the agenda, and it's the one in Simcoe on Round Lake Way, and it's behind our Norview nursing home. And we're up there the other day with staff on a little tour, and I'm wondering, staff, Long Point staff would do the review of the grading plan on that. If you take a look at it, when we drove back there, it seems significantly higher than the Norview property. And the way it, so who would have reviewed the grading plan? The engineering staff at Norfolk County?
Through the chair, we would have reviewed the grading plan as part of the application. But also Norfolk County staff reviewed.
Yeah. It looks high compared to Norview. When you tour the site. And then the other thing is that all that land at the back, we call it the wetland, that drains into Kent Creek. That's our water supply. And was there any consideration given to that? Like, how does it drain? They dump their stormwater in there? Is there some kind of filtration or anything, or do you know?
Through the chair, there's a number of considerations. And I believe that Norfolk County has a consultant that looks after some of that sort of pollution water information that it does drain into stormwater management policy. It's essentially released into Kent Creek. The whole of controls would
and see pond, so take another look. Well, it's kind of concerning because we're dealing with, water right now and Kent Creek's probably the most important. I think we got 5 wells back. Anyways, thank you.
Those concerns are noted, Doug. Peter, I think as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Leanne, what possible when we get these permit reviews, that we could have all the metric measurements just bracketed in imperial measure behind them? It would just make for a lot easier understanding of the reports and a quicker read.
Through the chair, yeah, you can do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I visit Norview once or twice a week, and I noticed that as well, that the height of St. Clair Developments is probably 6 feet higher than Norview. So I spoke with the Public Works Department, and they're saying that they're gonna have to put a retaining wall there so to make sure the soil doesn't run onto the Norview property. It is significantly higher. It almost looks like an engineering mistake.
We'll ask staff to confer with Oakville County. Perhaps get that, those concerns noted. Are there any questions on any of the other issues? Then we can, feel comfortable moving that they be, the report be received as information. Stuart and Peter, any final questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. On the report is received as information. Okay, since we have presentation that Cypher is going to introduce the presenter and we'll be speaking to the here.
Good evening, through the chair. A Class A project was initiated, which update was provided in the Board of Directors meeting that was held on February 7th. And Scott Robertson from Electric Solution presented their past presentation at the said meeting. The present time staff prepared a report on the ongoing activities since February 7th. And Scott Robertson is going to make the second and final bidding channel go up. We'll be happy to answer any question thereafter. And finally, if we get board's direction, we'll publish notice of completion. Yes,
Great, and Scott, you're gonna make a presentation. Just before we start, and I'm not gonna ask the recommendation be placed at this time, but just we should just keep that in mind during the presentation. And the motion would be, the proposed motion would be that we have seen one of the branches receives the assessment information and will eventually endorse alternative number 5, which is going to be spoken about as presented by meetings, and that along with it's going to direct staff post a notice of completion of the environmental study report be available for a 30-day public review period. So that's what half we're heading, and you may take that motion at the appropriate time if we concur with Scott's presentation and recommendation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Board for having me tonight. Cyber introductions. You can tell them?
If you want to.
Up to you. How's that? Okay, okay. So as Cypher mentioned, we were here 2 months ago. I briefed you on all of the happenings to date, which was a lot of the environmental characterizations. The identification of a series of alternatives and a select number of preferred. That's where we got to a couple months ago. I'm not going to go through all of that again tonight. I'm going to sort of summarize what's happened subsequent to that. We go to the next slide. Some of the things I will go over, I think it's important to revisit the problem statement, why we're here, why we did the project. Victoria Dam is a 65-year-old structure built in 1964 by LPRCA's predecessor, Big Creek. With any dam and with any responsible owner, the LPRCA completed a dam safety review in 2015, was completed by ACOM Consulting. And it identified the dam as a high hazard potential classification structure, and that was a result of the potential for life, property, environmental consequences if that dam were to ever fail through the downstream reaches, as compared to if there wasn't a dam there in the first place. So this is a provincial process that defines the level of concern around a given structure. So this was classified as a high hazard potential structure, which then sets the types of events that this structure must pass, the type of geotechnical and structural requirements that it must have. And further examination, the dam was determined to be deficient in terms of its adherence to provincial or federal guidelines on dam safety. It doesn't have the capacity to pass what's called the design flood. There's some geotechnical concerns around stability under an earthquake situation, that sort of thing. So again, responsible dam owner, you need to, if you want to bring this up to code, you need to remediate the structure, which puts us into a provincial permitting process under the Lakes and Rivers Improvement Act, as administered by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, which also then triggers an environmental assessment as a public facing body. And with you are subject to what's called the Conservation Ontario class of environmental assessments for flood and erosion control projects. So that prompted this study that we're currently running. So we'll go next slide. We outlined previously the key steps in the process, and as of our February meeting, we were about halfway down the page there. We had characterized and understood the broad environment, so not just the natural environment, but the social cultural environment, the economic environment, the regulatory and technical environments, and that's the broad environment in which the study is focused. We had defined and evaluated a series of alternative solutions that had the potential to remedy the problem. And we had gauged the public and stakeholders in an open and transparent process. So this was the local surrounding neighboring landowners to the broader community of Victoria and interested parties, NGOs like Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, Ontario Rivers Alliance, a lot of the Victoria Cultural Committee, governmental agencies, First Nations through Mississauga Zapata First Nation and the Six Nations of the Grand River. And at our last meeting in February, we had gotten so far as to define the preferred alternative, which was alternative 5, and I'll revisit that to refresh you on what that is. Subsequent to February, we've done a lot in the last 2 months. We have further refined the design of the preferred alternative and identified all of the potential impacts, positive, neutral, or negative. And for any negative impacts, identified mitigation strategies to try to eliminate those. We also documented the study in a public facing report. So that's an environmental study report. It's not public facing yet. That's contingent on one of the motions before you tonight. After this meeting, and we'll get to this on another slide, just those sort of the last boxes is the process that the report has to go through at a provincial level. So we'll go to the next slide. Subsequent to our last meeting, the week following, we met and did a similar presentation in Norfolk County, although it was a lot more rushed. It was a 5-minute deputation, and we had to condense that whole project into 5. The following day, we, as a study team with staff, we met with MNRF and we talked about aspects of interest to them from the Lakes and Rivers Improvement Act process related to the dam decommissioning, species at risk, and other things that fall under their umbrella. Obtained general conceptual buy-in for the process that's happened so far. The idea that this does classify as a dam decommissioning. It's still subject to a permit approval process following this, but we got general buy-in, I think, from staff and management there that we were all going along the right path. Staff have continued to engage with Six Nations of the Grand River, and I've highlighted this one here. This is the traditional council, not the elected council, who we were in touch with before. Through to the Haudenosaunee Development Institute, or HDI. I'm sure you're probably familiar with those as well. I mentioned we further assessed the preferred alternative against a screening as a variety of screening criteria, probably 30, and again, assessed for impacts and outline mitigation strategies for anything that was a negative. Finalized the environmental study report. Finalized is probably too strong. It's in final draft with LPRCA staff right now, and we will revise it to address any comments that come out of that. After which point it will be finalized, and again, subject to board approval tonight, submitted to the public record. We've also prepared a conceptual cost estimate that I'll talk about later. So to refresh you on what alternative 5 looks like, it consists of lowering the outlet in the reservoir operating level and naturalizing the new pond perimeter. So it's basically removing all of the existing flow control measures in the dam. It's currently controlled by a stop log structure. So over a period of 2 or 3 years, we remove all of those stop logs, decommission the low-level sluice gate that allows the pond to be drained And it would maintain a fish barrier passage, so it would retain a little bit of a small head pond in front of the dam, at least until such time as if it continues to accumulate sediment over the years, barring human intervention, so dredging, that pond would fill in, but at least initially we envision a small pond to be retained there. The road over top of the dam has to stay, the berm has to stay because it's the only access to properties south and southeast of the structure. That's a county-owned road. LPRCA owns the dam and all of the appurtenances controlled with our control structure associated with that. So we'll go next slide. We had talked about a number of advantages and disadvantages of alternative 5 at our last meeting. Mainly, it addresses the problem statement, so it resolves those conveyance capacity issues and the geotechnical structural stability issues because we're removing the standing body of water that's pressing on the dam. It is the lowest cost alternative of the 5 alternatives. We actually looked at 7, recall 2 of them were sort of sub-alternatives, but of all the alternatives, it is the lowest cost approach. It also, by decommissioning a dam, removes long-term operating and sort of study costs associated with owning a dam. So every 10 years, a dam owner would be on the hook to go back and do one of those dam safety reviews again. So having it be decommissioned as a dam resolves those future costs as well. We've got fish barrier passage as both an advantage and a disadvantage. That's by design. There is beautiful spawning habitat downstream with known salmon runs, trout runs. There's also a native brook trout population that exists upstream of the dam, and we do not want those two to mix because the species that are downstream would outcompete the species that are upstream, and we want to maintain that native brook trout population if we can. Rainbows in particular would predate them or outcompete them. There's also invasives. Sea lamprey is known in Lake Erie. There is a barrier at Fort Ryerson, and it is the first barrier, but this dam currently serves as a second barrier, and that was indicated by a number of the NGOs and by MNRF as something we would like to retain in place. So part of the design would be to maintain that fish barrier in place. Some dams are looking to just open up that watercourse, but in this case, it's a little bit different. In terms of other disadvantages, it does reduce the still water ponded area that's been in place for more or less 220 years. A dam or a mill has been in place here since the early 1800s. This dam structure, of course, is 1964, but the community has sort of grown to know and love this standing water body there. So it's seen as potentially a disadvantage, although there wasn't a lot of pushback around its loss at a lot of our engagement. It does have the risk of impacting adjacent shallow groundwater wells. So if you're on a shallow sandpoint well, and there's a number of neighbors along the north side of the reservoir that we know are on that, and that reservoir has been artificially holding up the groundwater table all these years, and we lower that reservoir level, what does it do to the groundwater table at these wells? And if it should reduce impact their water quantity supply, we would need to get in and mitigate that through the creation of new wells, deepening of their existing wells, but more likely creating new wells for them. So that's some of the disadvantages. We'll go next slide. Talked a little bit about the proposed implementation. Again, so there's on the right-hand figure, that's sort of looking up from downstream. And on the left-hand figure, if you configure the engineering drawings, there's stop logs that are on the left side, and those will be slowly removed over a period of 2 to 3 years to slowly lower that head pond water level down. The reason we want to do that slowly is because there's all the sediment that's been accumulated in that reservoir over these many decades, and we want it to be stabilized and in place. They often are left with a nutrient bank and a seed bank that's in that sediment, and as soon as they're exposed to the air and the sunlight, they will self-populate, self-vegetate, and that root mass helps stabilize that sediment. What we don't want to do is flush it downstream and ruin the salmon spawning habitat downstream. So the slow drawdown is intentional to try to minimize that sediment resuspension and transport. Again, we mentioned the fish barrier elements. We're going to leave that concrete structure in place at the bottom of the stop logs. We're going to fill in the spillway area where you see the water. It'll all be filled in with probably like a large diameter stone. And the idea there is to remove the launch pool that the spawning species need. They sort of need to dive down to jump up to get over that concrete sill. So by filling that in with large diameter stone, they remove the pool, so they won't be able to clear the sill and jump up there. There'll be a metal concrete lip that's applied on the that'll have to be installed onto the concrete sill as well, below the stop logs, where the stop logs are now. And it's a horizontal sill because these sea lampreys, if they happen to get up there, can actually climb vertically. So we put a horizontal lip and they'll climb up and they can't get around that, so they'll just fall back in. So it's a secondary barrier to that invasive species. And then the rest of the implementation is really an adaptive management approach of monitoring the conditions and adapting as necessary. We assume the stream channel can self-populate and self-stabilize. We assume the vegetation in that reservoir area is gonna pop up and self-stabilize, and that you don't have invasives like phragmites coming in, but they could be there. We're gonna monitor the groundwater table on those neighboring properties. We'll monitor the ponded area upstream of the dam because it will fill in over time with sediment. And then it'll be sort of a public decision or an LPRCA decision as to whether or not we wanna dredge and recreate this ponded area in front of the dam. Well, the next slide. I'm gonna get to what I know is of interest to both yourselves and the county, the conceptual cost estimate. This is not the end. There still does need to be a final design of the implementation strategy, sort of has to just be refined a little bit more. And there's a number of agency permits that will need to be obtained, so that Lakes and Rivers Improvement Act, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, your own CA permit, probably county permits because you're working around the road, that sort of thing. So there's just some processes that have to happen. Of the tasks, in working with CA staff and management over the last 10 months, I've come to learn, like, you've got ample expertise in-house in your aquatic ecology, in your terrestrial ecology, your engineering, your administrations. So there's a lot of those stick handling tasks like the agency permitting, or even doing some of the work, the monitoring for stability of the streams and monitoring for the vegetation, that can be done in-house, and that would represent some cost savings. We've assigned a cost to it here in case, barring the expertise, there's capacity issues too. So do staff have the time, or does that need to be farmed out? Of the tasks that are going to be listed on the next slide, only a few are really kind of certain costs. So there's that filling in of the fish barrier area, the filling in of the stone. There's the decommissioning of the dam itself, like the filling in of the concrete gains or closing off of the sluice gates. Those are sort of fixed costs that are going to have to happen. A lot of the other costs that we've assigned are contingency costs, because it's kind of the what if. What if staff don't have the capacity to take all that permitting control or the other, the monitoring control? What if, okay, on the groundwater well monitoring, it might not be a capacity issue. There might be an optics concern there with the neighboring landowners, maybe not trusting the CA to do the monitoring, to look at the impacts of their own work, and a third party might have to come in there. So and that a lot of that monitoring and adaptive management, it may or may not happen. So we've assigned costs to them, and then as a group, we can apply a percentage guess as to whether or not we're going to see those or not. So we go next slide. Of the certain costs, there's the fish barrier elements at 30,000 and the flow control structure decommissioning of 5,000. So that's sort of inherent in alternative 5 alone. The top line item, obviously the big item, the abutment, the wing wall, the pier, the sill concrete repair, those are actually recommendations that came out of the 2015 ACOM report. Those have to be implemented regardless of which alternative we were to go with here, because those are just structural issues with the concrete dam control structure. So I know that's probably bigger than what I said last time. I think I was asking, I thought 100,000 at the time, 75 to 100,000. I wasn't considering this because it was inherent in all of the alternatives, but I think it's something you absolutely need to know about and consider. But it is going to need to be done regardless. The contingency elements, as we talked about, erosion, sediment control during construction, those monitoring and invasives management if we have to. The only one I haven't really talked about is the stage 2 archaeology that came out of the stage 1 archaeology that was done as part of the EA. They identified that the grassed area downstream of the dam, so the active, or it's a passive conservation area around the dam. If we were going to get in there and disturb some of those areas, the archaeologists had identified the high potential for likely archaeological remnants there. So it would be subject to a stage 2 archaeology, like a field sort of, when they do their test pits and look around for things of archaeological record, and then permitting under the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism. It's actually not envisioned right now, so I've got it as a low potential. I don't think we're going to need to store any equipment or material down in that area. I don't think we're going to need to disturb it in order to implement alternative 5, as we've said. So if we put a sort of thumbnail in the air on the contingency costs and guess as to what percentage, 50, if you want round numbers, 66%, say 2/3 of that ends up being a cost that has to be considered. We would add that to the certain costs, and you're into about the $500,000 for full implementation. But again, begging your forgiveness, 300 of that comes from all alternatives, and it's just inherent in the structure that's already there. We'll go next slide. I put these in because I think a picture is worth 1,000 words, and you may not be able to sort of envision what I'm seeing this happening, But this is an example of a pond where the dam was removed. This pond had been in place again 180 years or something. This is what's called the Martin Pond. The road you see on the left side of the photos is Highway 6. Guelph is to the south, Fergus is to the north. So on that run, you would have crossed this pond in brook trout habitat. This work was undertaken by the Steed Valley chapter of Trout Unlimited Canada. They basically pulled the dam off in about 3 days and just let it naturalize. So 1 year later, what you see there, it's kind of hard to see the meandering plant form, but they did not do anything to that riparian sediment. That's all natural vegetation that just cropped up. The creek found its own new plant form, and they've been monitoring it. This was done in around 2010. They've been monitoring it. They found brook trout up and down now, and they're using their water course, so it's worked out perfectly. We'll go next slide. Google being Highway 6, Google Street View happens to go by there frequently and nicely post their pictures up for me. September 2009, that's what the reservoir would have looked like, looking east from Highway 6. And I took that picture myself July of last year. And that's 12 years after it basically matures. It's not all sunshine and lollipops hidden over there on the left, on the right. There was some Phragmites that they've had to deal with. It's happens to be adjacent to a local Jesuit retreat, and they've got a lot of volunteers that come in and they do the black tarping to try to keep those Phragmites down. I know that's an issue in the Long Point region. But I know we've also got Nature Conservancy of Canada, for example, that is funding a lot of the Phragmite control. So you've got the expertise and you've probably got funding in which to access that sort of thing. So next slide, next steps. So if we get board endorsement tonight, what happens is the environmental study report, subject to staff comments that are updated by myself, that ends up getting posted publicly and with a notice of completion. It opens up a 30-day review window for any stakeholder, Indigenous neighbors, NGOs, anybody, agencies to comment on it. We take any comments and we work with the commenter to try to rectify their concerns. Should they be raised and rectified, within the 30-day window, we revise the ESR, the environmental study report, reissue it with a notice of addendum to completion. It gets another 30-day window. But provided we don't get what it's called, used to be called a bump up request, now it's called a section 16 order request. If we don't get that, which we resolved all the comments, then we can circulate what's called a notice of project completion now, which means study's done and we can proceed to final design, permitting, all the other aspects and implement the project. Should they not be achievable, that actually goes to the minister to decide whether or not there's a legitimate concerns or not and what we need to do. So that path forward would have to be resolved at that time. So that's our next steps. With that, I'll open it up to Chris.
Just before many members have questions, Scott, Secretary, do you have anything that you'd like to add? And then we can have questions that perhaps directed to yourself or Scott. I'll say now.
So the chair, actually, we're looking for the endorsement and both direction. And that's what I can tell you. If we get that, as I mentioned, we'll publish a notice of completion of the ESR.
Okay, committee members, any questions? Check. No?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, and I apologize, I don't know the difference, but when you said in there, you mentioned 6 nations.
Yeah.
Something about that. What's the difference in there? You said, could you go to that slide or is that wrong? That's.
I have no problem going to the slide. I can describe it if you would like.
Yeah.
So, truth, I'm not an Indigenous consultation expert by any stretch. This is my understanding. That there are 2 governmental bodies claiming representation of the 6 nations of the Grand River. There's what's called the elected council. So that would be persons like yourself, like an elected council. There's a traditional council as well. That is, I don't know, appointed, but they, through the traditional council, is what is the Haudenosaunee Development Institute, which is sort of their wing that reviews development applications anywhere within in theory, the Haldeman Tract, but I know we're outside of the Haldeman Tract here, but any area of their concern. So there's basically 2 different governmental bodies that something.
Yeah, I guess my question is like, we're dealing with one of them, and I don't know the difference, but are they legit? I mean, are we obligated to do that?
Sorry, through the chair. We started the project only reaching out to the elected council. That was as per, it was an LPRCA decision, and it was per some correspondence that had been issued 2 years ago, I think it was 2022, from Six Nations elected council that requested that they requested, we are the elected council, we are the ones who want to be dealt with. When we circulated the notice of commencement, notice of initiation for this project to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, they come back with a list of thou shalt reach out to all of these other organizations as well. And one of the ones that they indicated that we should reach out to was the traditional council through HDI. So in that regard, because the ministry has told us to, we are obligated to at least consult.
Yeah. Second question, then, we will always have a, I'll call it a bridge there, if once this work is all done, the road and I call it a bridge, we still have to maintain that. There's no way we can, put a quality plate or something there that eliminates the need for a complete bridge structure that is there now, basically.
Through the chair, we would. So there would, because there is a large embankment there, which is across the Youngs Creek floodplain.
Yeah.
It would need to pass a certain amount of flow. Now, if it ceases to be a dam, then it ceases to be a high hazard potential classification structure.
Right.
So it no longer needs to meet this extreme flow that it currently needs to meet. So we have the 100-year flow, then we have the regional flow, which is Hurricane Hazel, that you don't, in this watershed. The one that this dam has to cross right now, because it's functioning as a dam, it's called the 1/3 between. So that's between 1,000-year flow and a probable maximum flood. Removing the dam, I think, brings it back to probably a structure like that has to pass 100 years. What the Ministry of Natural Resources is going to want from the final design as part of the dam decommissioning application under LRIA is an illustration of, should we get a big event, how high does water pond in that dam? Does it function as a dam under that situation? So this is a long way around to, it becomes a water crossing, which is a bridge or a culvert. At the time of that you would ever want to get rid of it as a bridge and perhaps replace it with a like a steel concrete or steel pipe bridge, you would probably need to go through that permitting process with, I don't know if M&R stays involved at that point because it's no longer a dam. I don't know if it becomes an LPRCA permit, probably. And because you're on a 100-year regulatory storm event, there's no way that's going to pond up and affect neighboring landowners. So you're not going to have you may have an effect on the 100-year flood level, which you wouldn't be able to do under a one zone floodplain policy approach, but there's no negative effects off of your own property. So I don't know for sure the answer to your question, but
Well, the reason I asked is like, I understand what we're doing with the water and the reservoir upstream, but in essence, we still got a structure to look after. As once you finish with this phase of it, we gotta.
we, the conservation authority, or we generally?
Well, I assume that maybe the county, because county owns the road, maybe it'll become their bridge, I don't know. That's why I'm asking a question, that's a simple way.
Well, through the chair, I mean, yes, because we have private properties to the south, I suppose a road will always need to be there. The road crosses a creek, so you will need to maintain a culvert of some kind, a crossing of some kind.
Yeah.
However, historically, I mean, that's not to preclude, historically, there was a road that came up off of Highway 24. So it's called Mill Pond Road, and where it wraps around, if we can go back to the cover slide even. So where that road wraps around, it only turns, you can see where the old road used to come down below the dam. Just to the west of that, it turned south and went down and connected to Highway 24. So whether that road allowance still exists, that the easement still exists, in theory, you could pull that crossing, you know, if we could ever recreate a road, it only needs to access, there's 2, I think, residences up there, and then there's a number of farm properties that need to be accessed. So you would need to retain some level of access. Whether it needs to necessarily be a bridge, I wouldn't rule it out entirely.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Sir?
Thanks. Just through the chair, just clarification on Doug's point earlier about the traditional folks. So I understand that whatever ministry has said, you also need to make, connections with A, B, and C. You're also including in any correspondence of the elected body as well. Like you're including both going forward if there is more information or more public type meetings or whatever, just to be clear.
So through the chair, yes, they would all be circulated on the notice of completion with the ESR. What we've done later in the project is handed more of that over to staff. Because what we've heard is that the First Nations, they would rather build the relationships with the applicants, with the municipalities. They don't want to deal with Joe Consultant who's only gonna be here for one project. So staff have taken over certainly the liaisons with HDI. I don't know if staff want to weigh in with anything further.
Through the chair, thank you. So, my understanding is that the six nations that were originally, sent the information, they did reply that they would notify us when, and David Brady, you can chime in, they would notify us when we had time to review and let us know what the cost would be and they did not participate in any of the meetings, or I think they're also invited as part of the working group. So we did hear from them. I don't think we heard from the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, correct? And then when we were told to consult with HDI or Homishoni, we did send them the information through emails. They did not respond for a few months.
4 months.
4 months. So then once they did respond, they said that our approach, the way they wanted us to approach it was we needed to fill out an application, basically what they call for development. And we were advised not to challenge their process. So we put together a package and we we had to send a check for $33,000 for $3,000 for their application. And then also, we had to send, I think, 4 copies of everything. So we had to curry off a box full of information like this. So we just did that on March 13th. So we're just waiting now to see how they said they would advise us how they want to proceed once they get through the information. So that's, just so the board's clear about what has occurred, so.
So, yeah.
Thank you for that information, Judy. I just want to clarify the check amount that you said. How much was the check?
The requirement for that application was $3,000.
Thank you.
Some of us are a little bit more used to dealing with the Haldeman tract issues with the traditional and the Confederacy and the elected, and it's a complicated path, but it's a path that if you've done it right, you can establish relationships that kind of pay off in the future. Step off the beaten track, sometimes it could be not a good thing, so. We're sad. Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you just mentioned, some are more familiar with dealing with this process than others. I am not. I'm just curious, this particular property is not within your reserve system. How is it that a group like that's that far removed from the actual premise has the right to charge fees?
You want to take a stab at that?
So, the process for consulting, with the different stakeholders was actually, part of the prescribed process for the environmental assessment. Am I correct in saying that? So this is something that is established and And we had followed it and sent the information to the two, and then when the government said, you also need to consult, we did that. So how they set the fees, any kind of monitoring, there's always fees related to when there's engagement and consultation with the group. So I'm not sure how they're set, but I know that there are fees. We've had prior experience with that here.
And this, I guess the bottom line is that this is a directive from province that.
Yeah, it's part of the process.
As part of the consultation process, so.
Mm.
You don't necessarily have to be in the Alderman track to deal with the
It's a treaty, right?
consultation.
I have my own sensible that. So,
Any other questions, Michael?
so we're looking at a cost estimate of over $500,000. And WEC's helped us today 50%. So how are we going to toss this out? Who's paying for it? Is it a special assessment to Norfolk County? Or where do we go with this from here on?
So through the chair, there would be, this project would be eligible for an application to go to Western for, definitely for the larger concrete repairs. And, I'm not sure about the restoration part through the WECI application, but there's been other sources of funding available for this type of projects. And I think some of them participated at the consultation, through this whole process. So people have come forward and said, oh, if you're gonna do this, we have some funding, we would help with the naturalization, with the fish structure. So I think there's different pockets of money that we get access for that. And then obviously we would apply to WECI for the repair. And then that, at that point, it'd be 50 cents for Norfolk County and, to do the repair.
And when do you expect the first stop logs to be pulled out?
We don't actually have that mapped out yet, but that would be something that if we get the project, completion filed and if we get to that point, then we would have a work plan on for that alternative.
Thank you.
And oh, just sorry, another point, Norfolk County, we have been working with their engineering groups in the last capital budgets. And so we call them the capital, but on your side, it's through the operations. For Norfolk County staff, they have been providing, putting in a provision for the works that's gonna be needed in the future for the various dam projects. So if you're on your side, they are starting to build a reserve there.
Thank you.
Shelley Ann has a question and then Chris.
Thank you through the chair. It's just more of a comment. So Haldeman County's been doing some learning sessions, or some of our council's been doing some learning sessions with First Nations, the Mississaugas First Nations, and then also with the Six Nations. And it's my understanding that the treaty holders in this area, and would be that Victoria Dam area, would be the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, not the HDI. So just going forward, if you are doing environmental assessments like this, maybe reaching out to Mississaugas of Credit First Nation to see who holds the treaties in the areas that you're looking at, so you don't get caught into this political field where it's costing money. Thank you.
That's noted wisely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Follow up to Rutten's question, about whether it's a dam or a bridge. I brought that up, meeting, I've talked to engineering staff, county, it's still the gray area. I don't think we got the clear answer. The one answer we did get is because we're leaving that cement lip in there, and I can't remember if it's like more than a meter high, then it's a dam. If it's less than a meter, and don't quote me on that number, and it might be a case where when we go put that sill plate in, to go saw about 2 inches of the thing off, and then it's no longer a dam. Then it becomes a bridge, and it's maintained by the county under the bridge standard, which is totally different than owned by the Conservation Authority under the dam standard. So we need an answer from either LPRCA or the county, and somebody's got to claim it as either a dam or as a bridge, and make sure that's qualified. And it doesn't really matter because the county's paying for it all anyway. Which there is money in the capital budget, and we need to save a bunch of it because the next one on the list is Teeterville Dam. I think that one's gonna be a lot more expensive than the Victoria Dam, so we better save the money on this one to put into that.
It would be nice if it was a template for that.
No, it ain't gonna happen, Peter.
Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Judy. So Judy, since this is no longer going to be considered a dam, it's still eligible for WECI funding.
Because, sorry, through the chair, my understanding would be eligible for WECI because of the, was part of the whole decommissioning, would that be the right term? And they will fund that, and we would have to apply for the funding, but it would still be eligible, is my understanding. That's what, Lori had told us. We met on that, talking about the different ways we can fund this, so. Am I correct, Scott? You've been involved with that for many years.
Lori would know more than I, for sure, sorry, through the chair. It's gonna take 2 or 3 years to draw this down. I would suggest we do the work while it's definitely still a dam. And then we qualify for WECI, but
Yeah.
it's, I think the act of decommissioning is probably a WECI fundable activity, and that's probably what we was getting at. And to Dr. Van Tassen's question before, the act of defining it as a dam or a water crossing would really come down to the MNRF. They're the ones who, entertain the permit for the dam decommissioning. And we did receive, so we had the luxury on the call of having the senior dam fellow from MNRF on the call, and he gave his opinion in the minutes that if we did this work as we're planning, in his mind, it was moving from a dam decommissioning from a dam to a water crossing. So
We have an answer.
that's great. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the recording secretary to read the motion. Please, words. We're gonna pass it on there. Here, do the motion.
The LPRCA Board of Directors receives the Victoria Dam Class Environmental Assessment update as information, and that the LPRCA Board of Directors endorses alternative number 5 as preferred alternative as presented by Matrix Solutions Inc. And that the LPRCA Board of Directors directs LPRCA staff to post notice of completion of an environmental study report to be available for a 30-day public review period.
Council moving that, Chris.
I'm gonna
Let's
take
get it on the floor first.
I'm gonna take the blame for it all anyway. I'm not gonna move it.
Okay, there's the intrepid one moves it. Do I understand you? Let's get it on the floor first then. That's seconded by Tom. Now, are there any questions to the motion or the report before I call the question?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little confused here. You just told me we're waiting for a response from one of these groups. And you're just telling me we put it out for notice. What if they come back and don't like what we're planning? What do we do then?
Your chair.
That,
Sure, through the chair. Anybody has the ability to come back and comment. So we would do our best to address their comments through the 30-day window. If we could, then we do. And if we don't, then they have the opportunity to submit a section 16 order request to the minister. And they then evaluate the request versus, and they would look through the entire sort of documentary record and everything we presented, and they would decide whether or not to know that request or not.
Okay, Judy, the information you sent. Previous one, you said. March, something, you sent a whole package of stuff off.
Yeah.
Did it include this recommendation? Recommendation 5?
it included that too.
And the draft. And study, and then the archaeological stage one, is there, and the, historical, like.
The recommendation that we're looking at.
The next study application of.
Which,
That there's the draft environmental. Stuff in here,
yes,
yeah, so it would have the program.
and if, sorry, through the chair, if they were circulated the PowerPoint presentations or the public information center materials, I'm assuming.
Was that sent to you? So they were, yeah, all the public.
So the selection of the preferred alternative was identified in those presentations as well.
Thank you.
That can be done concurrently with 30-day review period.
Through the chair, nobody outside of staff and myself have seen the environmental study report yet, so they're going to be getting it at the same time as everybody else.
Any final questions? Call the question to the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And we'll move on to the next step. Now we can go to the general manager's report. Judy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, tonight you'll be hearing a lot about the interior regulation 4124. I just touched on that in my opening on my report. Leanne has some reports for the board to consider tonight. We're waiting actually for the WECI application to drop. That hasn't been sent out yet. It's getting it's a shorter and shorter window to get the work concluded by next March, but we're hoping that that application comes in the next week or so, because we do have projects that were slated in the budget that we would like to get some funding for, it is applied for. Paul Gilman has been out validating the cover crop programs with the various farmers that were enrolled, and will be well, we actually have processed most of the checks. I'm sending out just under $49,000 to the people that had participated. That program is very well received. We are continuing with our invasive control program in our own waste tracks. And staff have been working with the tracks and Alderman with our own forest there. Like that's beside the conservation area, and two other landowners where we'll be doing some treatment funding for that, for the hemlock woolly edges. And that will be occurring in June, starting in June. So we've gone out and inventoried the trees that have been identified. The University of Toronto has reached out and along with the Canadian Forest Service, and they're very interested also on coming on and helping with research. And then recently, or the one organization that we belong to, the basically under the FSC, they are applying for some funding also to help do some research and develop some protocols. And they would also like to work with us, and basically because we're the first on the ground actually doing some active treatment on their invasive bug. So if that funding comes through, we'll have some more people interested, and hopefully as we're able to get more places that we can treat as this travels in the watershed and try to contain it as best we can. So it's pretty exciting that we're actually starting to see a lot of interest in what we're doing. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Questions to Judy on her report? Someone, oh, sorry, Michael.
Mr. Chair, Judy mentioned the cover crop program.
Yeah.
We still involved in any way with the Alice program?
So through the chair, the ICAP funding flows through the Norfolk Alice River.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor of receiving the report? Opposed? Motion's carried. Yeah, I did, didn't I? I guess I didn't.
I'll move.
It's your two movers.
Use that ring stew.
Brady and Stewart, or Stewart and Brady, I didn't see which one would be going up for. I didn't see any hands up. So, next is the regulation 2024. Yeah.
Thank you. Through the chair, as Judy mentioned, on February 16th of 2024, the province approved the new minister's regulation, Ontario Regulation 4124, which came into effect a couple days ago on April 1st of this year. In addition, earlier amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act, which address CN regulation of development, came into effect on April 1st. This first report is a summary of the changes, and we're also asking the board to endorse updating the rest of the stuff that we haven't quite got around to. So in this report, there's a lot of changes that have occurred. I won't go into detail on all of them, but I'd like to highlight some of them for everyone tonight. So one of the first ones that has a big impact is the regulated area around provincially significant wetlands. Used to be 120 meters and has now been reduced to 30 meters. There's also a number of permit exemptions listed in the new regulation. Many are minor and have size and or location restrictions. A decision must be made on a permit within 90 days, or the applicant has the ability to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Existing permit tests related to pollution and the conservation of lands have been removed. The new test added for consideration of unstable soil or bedrock, health or safety of persons, and damage or destruction of. There are new powers to the minister to issue permits and or direct an authority to not issue. There's also new fine offenses for section 28, which is up to $50,000 for individuals and $1 million for corporations, plus daily fine can be added on top of that. As a result, we've had to update a number of our policies and procedures, and document changes are required. To date, staff have been able to update the existing policy and procedures documents for development for review and permitting, update the permit application forms and all the associated documents, which includes updating and removal of all the Ontario Regulation 170.6. And they've also been able to provide correspondence to our member municipalities regarding the changes. There's still some work that needs to be completed. Like I said, this report is being provided for your information. There's several reports that will follow this that will update you with the work that we have done and asking for either for your information or approval. In this report, we're asking you're directed to update our existing hearing policies procedures, because that will need to be updated based on all the changes. We'll also need to update all our existing regulation mapping. One of the big changes is the provincially significant wetlands regulated area from 120 meters to 30 meters. And also just keep working the guides that we have to bring up to date. If there's any questions, I can answer them.
Questions? Did you read out the resolution in a long parade?
The LPRCA Board of Directors received this report as information, then that staff be directed to update the existing FEMA procedure policy to ensure compliance with new regulation and legislation, and return to the Board of Directors for approval. And that staff be directed to update the existing LPRCA regulation mapping documents and guides to ensure compliance with new regulations and legislative changes.
Wanted to make the same say twice. Do I have a mover? Rainey, and seconded by Shelley Ann. Any final questions? All those in favor? No, our voice carried. Your next report.
This next report is updating the policy for delegation of powers related to the permit issuance, extension, and cancellation and hearings. So for this report, we've had to change quite a few things to be compliant with Ontario Regulation 4124. Some of the changes are that there's further details that are provided in this document relating to the cancellation of permit. The notice of cancellation can be authorized by the general manager or manager of corporate services while keeping the associated hearing with the board of directors. It also outlines the process for administrative review related to the notice of complete applications. So there is a variety of reasons why an applicant is being asked for an administrative review. One of them is that if the applicant disagrees with the authority's determination that the applicant's work permit is complete, or if the applicant believes that the request made by the authority for additional information, studies, or plans are unreasonable. Some of the items remain the same, which includes delegation of permit issuance, revisions, and administrative reviews to be delegated to the general manager, and also all hearings that can come based on administrative zoning orders or hearings with respect to cancellation of permits for what we see as traditional hearings with staff and recommended approval. All that will stay with the board of directors. So first couple pages are the staff report, and the policy is with track changes to page 53 to page 55. And if you have any questions, I can let you know.
Questions? This is really, there's a lot of revisions in this policy, and trusting staff is, let's spend a lot of time going through this office. Any questions? No, let's have a motion. Jamie, do you want to read?
The LPRCA Board of Directors approves the administration and delegation of powers related to the permit issuance, extensions, cancellation, and hearings.
I
Ms. Clerk.
think, you moved it? Yes. Seconded by Tom. Any final questions? I think the fact that there are no questions, is a that staff are doing a lot of work that, was necessary because of provincial, legislation. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Okay, now we have to do some, appointments. I've got this right, yeah, are you doing this one as well?
Yes, I am. So again, as a result of the new stuff, the provisions of the Conservation Authorities Act that came into effect April 1st, all regulation officers and provincial census officers had to be redesignated. So in addition, attached to this report is dated designation letter received by the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, which is required for staff to be able to be considered under the Provincial Practice Act. So this report is to redesignate all our staff under their respective areas. We have myself and Isabel with their section 29 of the Act. And we're going to also have a number of staff under section 29 of the Act. The purpose of this is just to redesignate all of us, so we still have all our powers that we had to enforce these sections.
Motion is copied in your agenda packages. Would someone like to move it? Joanne and Michael. As read, all those in favor? Motion carried. Yeah. Okay. Next. Logical survey.
There's.
Did I miss one?
Yeah. Sorry.
Or just kind of like, yeah, that. What to do? Okay, this is a big one. Try to skip it for you, but.
No, we'll work with this report is to present the members with updated policies for the administration of our new regulation. This policy document is used for the administration of development regulations within our watershed, and was required to be updated. Staff have also taken this opportunity to make additional housekeeping amendments to provide greater clarification within the document. For example, in our old document, there was a definition that was listed twice. So we kind of take this opportunity to clean up some of that stuff. And then also implement the changes as a result of legislation. So the general review of what we've done is all references to Ontario Regulation 17806 have been replaced with Ontario Regulation 41.4. Additional information has been added to clarify the application submission and review process. So there's a whole section added to help provide some clarity to applicant. If it's a family document, read out of it. Definitions have been adjusted or changed within the regulation. So the definition of water source has changed from Ontario Regulation 806 to Ontario Regulation 424. So that has been changed. Permit exemptions are now in Ontario Regulation 41.4. We've inserted that into our policy document. References to pollution or the conservation plan as tests of our legislation have been removed from the policy document. And references to hazardous lands have been changed to unstable soil or that off to be consistent with the changes to the legislation. Staff is seeking the approval of the SB doc.
Any questions to the report or the policy? Question.
Other questions, board. I had talked to Dana the other day when this is no longer drafted, it's all finalized. I would like a hard copy of it. The other member of the board would like a hard copy of the old school and what's happening in the future.
Maybe we all want one. Pretty important document. Okay, there is a recommendation there that the board of directors approve the policies for the administration of different activities, exemptions, and those regulation as presented. Chris, so I see it's a hard copy of it. Greg Snyder, Jim. Any final questions? All those in favor? Motion's carried, as well. One thing to now change on the how to say that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report, we're asking the board to consider approving hiring natural resource solutions to do ecological surveys on 144 acres. And the bid price was $29,950 plus HST. The forestry supervisor did request quotes. We did receive 3 quotes. 2 were very close in price. And Rebecca Cheney at 24,000. She didn't meet all the requirements. So it brought it down to the 2, and we're asking the board to consider the natural resource solutions.
Any questions? Sure.
Thanks, through your chair. Judy, maybe it's a private issue, but can we touch on why the one you mentioned climax was it an internal thing, this compound, or something we can discuss and look into?
It was the approach that she was using. It wasn't the grid system that we wanted. It was, she referred to, she was doing wandering, not a very structured. We wanted to make sure we got coverage, so that was one thing, and it was just herself versus the other groups had multiple staff, which we felt of the for the survey to be completed, and those are the 2 things that are solved.
People are saying, I noticed this has got both acres and hectares. I wonder if you'd like to move the motion in this. So Peter moves it, because it has both metric and. seconded by Rainey. Any questions there? Didn't even put you on the hot seat there, Peter. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Now we're gonna deal with a bunch of tenders. Cypher, you've got the first one with the awesome.
Thank you. Through the chair, the tender for 2023 or 2024 model year ACV crossover all-wheel drive vehicle was posted on the LPRCA website and sent to 30 owners. 7 bids were received, in which 6 of them made or exceeded the required specification. The lowest bidder is Ford Kia for a new 2024 Kia Seltos LX all-wheel drive vehicle for their quoted price of 28,977 and 50 cents. This is within the 2024 capital budget. Staff recommended the board award this bid or bid to the lowest bidder.
Any questions? Well,
So what are we doing with the caravans that we're replacing with Kia? What are we doing with it? Is it going to be auctioned or sold off or scrapped or?
Through the chair, yeah, we're replacing in 2011 Dodge Grand Caravan, which will be auction.
Good, thanks.
there's a motion that, the PRCA Board of Directors accept the you can see why I didn't illusion those things, accept the timber submitted by Fort Miller Kia. I'm not gonna describe, it's too long, but the price is 28,977 50 cents excluding HST. Someone move that. Stewart, seconded by. Dow. All those in favor? Hearing, demonstrator, rules tender, cipher, one more cab pickup.
Through the chair, yes, it is pickup truck tender. A tender for 2024 model 4x4 regular cab pickup truck was posted on the LPRCA website and sent to 9 vendors. We received 3 bids, which all of them made or exceeded the specification. The lowest bidder is Risley Ford for a new 2024 Ford F-150 model for their quoted price of 51,634, and this is within our 2024 capital budget. And staff recommended the board award this bid to this last bidder.
Any questions, sir?
So just, through the chair, just wondering why the one county bid on the quarter ton as opposed to a half ton? That would show a difference in the price.
Through the chair, in our tender, we mentioned 4x4 regular cab pickup truck. We didn't mention half ton or 3/4 ton. We received the quote for, this is the lowest quote we got, 3 quotes, with 2 of them for half ton. And as my understanding, we have our pickup trucks, all of them are half ton. So we decided to give this half ton with the lowest bidder.
Thanks for that. And just further comment, I would maybe suggest that we include that or we highlight that for like. We want to have tomorrow, that's going to flat the price.
There was an oversight, or you really, it was just missed.
Like,
The other thing I think we should highlight is what size engine is it? Are these V8s or 2.7 liter?
Would you? It's because of Chelsea in there, it's just, you had to put the 1,500.
did you hear that?
Because I take it's a 4x4, so we may be doing some trailer work with it, pulling loads. So I would think, I would hope this is a V8, but I don't know.
It is a V8.
Good.
Okay, David, can you read that?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, Peter.
One further question. Thank you. Just to staff, I'm not sure who needs to answer this, but when I look through these tenders, one thing that strikes me is that the vehicles that are being retired are not terribly high in kilometer ratings. In terms of their expected lifespan, I get that they're getting up in age, but kilometers wise, they're not necessarily all that wore out yet. And I just wonder if somebody could speak to that.
We want to take a stab at that. Judy?
Through the chair to Peter, which vehicle you're talking about specifically?
Well, both of these last two tenders now that we've been discussing, so for the sport utility vehicle versus the Grand Caravan, and now this pickup truck tender as well. Both of those vehicles should be expected to reach 200,000 kilometers, I would think, without too much trouble.
It's on the Dodge Caravan, it's mechanically that there's issues have been identified that we felt that we proved to turn it over. On the pickup trucks, we are, sure, trucks were receiving a lot more abuse. And we have changed some things where we're restricting what some of the use is. So the pickup trucks, bodies and things, and we are oiling now the pickups. We put that in, we're putting mud flaps on. We're doing some things to mitigate some of the things that damage pickup trucks. So we should be able to see the light go longer. We're basically close to having a fleet turnover, where they probably will last longer here, and I do recognize, but some of the pickups that we have been auctioning off, the bodies are, rotting out. The boxes were rotting out, very low miles, but just not properly maintained. So we've changed the process on that to make these assets go further.
You want to see a truck that's got a lot of kilometers and a lot of rust as a red Dodge. Yeah, I would love to have one of these F-150 like horse. David, you read the motion.
The LPRCA Board of Directors accepts the tender submitted by Casco Ford for the purchase of one in 2024 Ford F-150 4x4 regular cab pickup truck, $51,634, excluding HST.
Did I get a mover for that? Peter and Stuart, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Yeah, sorry. Next one, Cypher.
Through the chair, it is from to the tractor. We received 6 bids, which all bids made the specification or exceeded the specification. The lowest bidder is Farm Power Equipment for a new 2024 Mahindra 26608 ST cab model for their quoted price of $58,030.80. This is within our 2024 capital budget, and staff recommend the board award this bid to this lowest bidder.
Any questions there?
Right, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am familiar with some of these. What is it, Mahindra? No,
Mahindra.
no, where? Never heard of it. Where are they?
Through the chair is Mahindra. It is originated from India, and now it is parts are coming from India and is assembled here as well.
We don't have one of these now.
Mahindra.
We do.
We have one.
Oh, I mean, the performance,
Tom? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess, with that, where is Farm Power?
I can tell you, it's located just off of Schaefer Road on Highway 3 between Cortland and Dell.
Final questions on that? Dave, you read the resolution? One second.
That the LPRCA. That the LPRCA Board of Directors accept the tender submitted by Farm Power Equipment. The purchase of one new 2024 Mahindra 2660 HST cab front loader tractor. Plus the loader and bucket for $58,013.80 excluding HST.
Move that, Chris, seconded by Rainey. Any final questions? Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Next, the writing board.
Through the chair, it's 2024 model zero car more. We received 4 bids, which all of them made or exceeded the required specification. The lowest bidder is Norfolk Tractor for a Kubota ZD 1011 T54 model for their quoted price of 17,300. And again, it is within our 2024 capital budget. And then staff recommended the board award this bid to this lowest bidder.
Question, Shelley?
I'm just wondering if this is gas powered or diesel, solar.
It's diesel.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Amy, can you read that one?
That the LPRCA Board of Directors accepts the tender submitted by Norfolk Tractor. The purchase of one new 2023 or 2024 model year zero turn mower. Called a ZD 1011-3-54 for $17,300 excluding HST.
Who's moving that one? Tom, seconded by Jim. Any final questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And now we're on giving disposal services. Aaron's gonna take it over from Cyber.
Thank you, Robert. So as we do each year, we send out the specific tender for our 5 campgrounds. We sent it out to 4 vendors, receiving 3 bids at all 5 sites. Overall, 2 of the sites went up a little bit, 3 sites went down. So the overall rate compared to 2023, it went down 5.2%, which is big news. We did budget 79,750 overall for 5 parks. Last year's full cost for all 5 parks was $76,207. So I think that all usage remains constant, should be well within budget for overall for the 2024 season. So we're recommending that we proceed with the low bidder at each conservation area. So for Bacchus, that would be Bayside Septic Services. For Deer Creek, Bayside Septic Services. For Haldeman, Frankie's Pumping. For Norfolk Conservation Area, Bayside Septic Services. And for water, for North Conservation Area, Frankie's Pumping Service. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to. Thank you.
Any questions? Over. Go. Seconded by Jim. And if you need to read that one, the report, all those in favor? So the items of business, and we're going to move on to the closed session. And then get next and read the official motion to go into closed section and.
The LPRCA Board of Directors does now enter a closed meeting to discuss commercial matters by an identifiable individual, including employees of the authority, and a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the authority which is disclosed is reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly competitive position or interferes with related contractual or other negotiations of persons, group of persons, or organization.
We heard the resolution, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried.
Can I have them?
I don't think we did, but I'll get one of them. Peter and Rainey. Seconded. I'll shut that door. You're online. Okay, continue with the meeting in open session. Judy, you have a proposed motion for us.
Yeah. Do you want to describe it over there?
Yeah, well, I'm just kind of
So,
still hard to read. but-
okay, so just read it and you can read your own writing. It's like seeing what I have right here.
Okay. That since no qualifying tenders were received for the UTV tender, and that the LPRCA board directs staff to request quotes as per the purchasing policy.
Someone feel comfortable moving that?
What's the item that we're talking about? Though?
The
UTV tender.
I know, but the motion doesn't say that.
Says UTV.
Does it say UTV? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Please.
which for those who don't like acronyms, utility task vehicle.
Yeah, that's correct. And then we can put UTV in brackets.
Did I get a mover? Chris, seconded by Tom. Any questions on that? Staff has direction to move forward with sourcing the UTV.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay. Moving close. I think the last motion is a motion to adjourn. Is there anything else to come before the board? It's fine. Our next meeting will be a combination source protection authority meeting and a board of directors meeting on May 1st, 2024, here at 7 o'clock. It's a town hall early. If we have a source water protection meeting. Anything else before the board? I will, put it in the meeting.